Welcome back to Origins, Minisode edition. This is the podcast that dives deep into the business of venture capital, where we learn how the people behind the capital, both GPs and LPs, make decisions. I'm Nick Chirls, GP at Asylum Ventures.
And I'm Beezer Clarkson, your LP co-host from Sapphire Partners, where we aim to invest in exceptional early-stage venture capital managers ranging from emerging to established franchise VCs. And I'm really excited to unpack our recent conversation with Sarah Tavel. Wow, she's so amazing.
When she described her job as a venture partner, had some FOMO, some jealous.
Sign me up.
Not in that just time every week to actually think and go deep on things. She didn't say exactly this, but I actually do think that's probably how this job should be done. And it's definitely something we talk about as a team all the time. How do we carve out more thinking time for each other?
It's funny, way back in the day, I think this is 15, 17 years ago, I met a long-short public stock investor. And he said he doesn't schedule meetings really 4 days a week, so he can just go really deep and think about things. And it's interesting because he's holding these companies for a long period of time. But to make a decision was so big. And it just stuck in my head about the importance of having unstructured time. And yet my day is literally down to the half-hour increment. So I am terrible at executing. But you see the power of it in multiple places. And P.S., he was an extraordinary investor.
I mean, you see that with, I think, many of the best investors across, Warren Buffett, getting into work every day and reading and thinking. And I do think there is this feeling as a particularly early stage VC where busy is doing, if your calendar is packed or doing the job correctly. I don't think that's the case.
Well, no, I thought Sarah was very articulate about that her, when you start out your career, you tell me how it is when you were starting out, but there's a lot of sourcing. And if you miss that one entrepreneur that you could have fit in for your half-hour time slot, there is a lot of negative feedback, shall we say, right? She embodies first principles. I mean, she's very similar to you two, and you guys are very simpatico on this. So you think about the trends and how do things evolve over time and what have been the learnings. And then if you extrapolate this out, where could it be going? So when you meet entrepreneurs, there's a resonance, which I'm sure there's always somebody who comes and says something you hadn't even thought of. And that's wonderful aspect of it too. But the brain might just need time to do that. I don't know. Maybe it's instantaneous. It's not instantaneous for me. I need to sit down and think about it.
Okay. I have a question for you that I was thinking about.
Okay.
I wouldn't say 100% of our investments are in AI at this point by any means, but certainly it feels close to that in terms of the founders that we're meeting. And I assume that's true for almost every venture firm right now. Even in, biotech. How do you think about that just from a risk perspective from an LP? On the one hand, it's okay, similar to software eating the world, AI eating the world. So forget about AI. It doesn't really matter. It's just, it's going to be embedded in every single important category, vertical, et cetera. The flip side of that is perhaps many of these companies or transformations or business models are not particularly sound. Folks have invested a lot of capital into it across every single venture firm, and all of a sudden, actually, there's crazy correlation across all your venture firms.
It's definitely a conversation I'm hearing amongst LPs on the level of how do you thread this exact needle, which is if you assume AI is, software is eating the world. If there isn't AI embedded in the software, I would, what is an example of an investment you're thinking about that isn't, is it more hardware? What are the aspects of it that isn't going to at some point, sort of when everything didn't have to be mobily oriented, but if you're digesting a lot in your phone, people had to be at least aware of these things.
Yep.
But what I think you're asking is, well, what do you then do when these exact companies have significant valuations very early on? They're attracting a ton of follow-on capital. Therefore, could there be some really big washouts? History would say yes. And value might accrue to the consumer as a user, but it might not accrue to the LPs and it might not accrue to the GPs because it's, when we got all those discounts on DoorDash and Lyft and all those places, the dollars kind of went, and this is just so not a nice way of saying it, but the dollars kind of went from the LPs to the consumer and did not come back around, right?
Although they did ultimately with Uber and DoorDash.
Ultimately, if you were invested in them and you came in at the right price during that, or you held the stock, or you could thread the needle, but it certainly wasn't, I think, all the exposure. And maybe it was 2 companies or 5. Yeah, so that's the worry, is how do you learn from history and pick well so that your chances of being in those few companies that really do work and aggregate the value are where it goes. And that's just part of picking well, right? Finding GPs that you think have the insights into that and can manage their portfolio construction. And I don't think it's fundamentally different from any other LP's job. I think right now is just you're watching this valuation lift happen. And this is why I always suggest people study history, because it's not going to tell you the answer of is it Nick or is it Sarah, is it Beezer, but it's going to tell you this is going to happen. So choose wisely, right?
My last thought on this, it's like, as an LP, you're thinking about like diversity, I assume, across managers. And I mean diversity as in geographically or stage or sector, and when everything sort of converges globally around this sort of AI cycle, can you achieve diversity as an LP?
Such an interesting question. Some LPs don't want to diversify. I mean, it does expose you. I get your point. Your point is like, is your point to be concentrated in your risk because you really believe in something, and then pick, if you rode the social networking wave back in the day and made sure you had a good array, you probably pick some of the ones. And if you held your Facebook stock and your whatever stock, probably worked out okay. But there are other folks that don't want that risk profile. Maybe you get muted returns, but you also don't have as many potential divots, and people have to choose. And then there's all sorts of other places that people are talking about.
Right. Yeah, I guess I hear your point through the lens of like, this is a power log game regardless. And like, yeah, if AI goes through some cooling period and there's a lot of companies that go away, like, it is likely as an LP and great managers that you'll have 1 or 2 historical great ones, the next Google or Facebook or whatever, that it doesn't really matter.
And I don't know, so there are LPs that do multiple asset classes. Do you boundary this with credit or something that's more stable? Or I don't know, but you can pick some of those things to make sure you have some different kinds of return profiles that are not quite so spiky. Honestly, what you said is the reason why people do venture, because if you can find that alpha, it's very hard to argue to have your money locked up for extended periods of time if there isn't ultimately a very significant return. And one of the bigger concerns is all of these high valuations that people are paying so early on is going to erode that alpha in the future, because are these companies really going to be that big? We'll see.
So many fascinating different pieces that are playing out, around sort of new business models around AI, the quality of the revenue. Can these be enduring companies? What does the valuation matrix mean for returns for venture and LP? Like, I actually think 5-10 years from now, we'll look back on this time and there will be clearer answers. But really, really, I think Sarah's point is correct, that it's very difficult to have really strong opinions over time because we're getting new information so rapidly that you have to sort of update your thinking.
It's so funny. When you're talking about people asking questions and you go away and think about it, I go away and think about these statements that you make all the time. So thank you. It's true.
Well, I have the right to update them every minute.
No, totally. It's totally true. It's totally true. Let's wrap it.
So much fun.
So much fun.
See you soon, Beezer.
Okay. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to this Minisode of Origins, the show where we discuss the venture capital ecosystem through the lens of myself, a GP, and my co-host Beezer, an LP.
We'll be back soon with a new episode of Origins. You can find that right here in this feed, and while you're there, please rate and review the podcast. It's truly super helpful for other folks looking for venture insights to find our show, and really, really helpful for Nick and I to know what you want to hear. I'm Beezer Clarkson.
And I'm Nick Chirls, and we'll be back soon. Thanks for listening.